Today I'm going to be talking about the forgotten Stoic, Musonius Rufus. I say forgotten because I feel like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, Cato, those people are what people think of when you say a Stoic. But Musonius Rufus was the teacher of Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius thanks Epictetus in his Detson lessons chapter, first chapter of Meditations. And I think it's just really cool that, it starts with Musonius Rufus, who, he talks about it in chapter 3, but he allowed women and slaves to be taught or to attend his philosophy classes, which was not common back then. He believed that they had the same right to philosophy as anyone, and the practice of philosophy is to be a good person and to have good morals. So he believed, why shouldn't a woman and a slave also study philosophy, which obviously is very true, but back then it wasn't. So I'll just show you guys kind of how I like to kind of go through these books. I highlight a lot of things when I read, and then after I do that, I'll have a philosophy book, and then I'll go through and kind of just write down stuff I highlighted, stuff I really hit me and I really enjoyed throughout the book. So today I was just gonna go through and some of the more the powerful chapters I liked and some good lessons and quotes I got from this book. First off, I highly recommend you read it on your own. It's a very good book, and if you've read any other Stoic philosophy, this is, I believe, right up there with the rest of them. Very good, very easy to consume. It's simply profound. It's profoundly simple. So, that being said, we'll get into this. And yeah, chapter 3 is that women too should study philosophy. And he has a lot of good points in this chapter, but one I really liked is doing it wrong is worse than suffering one, and to regard being worse as better than gaining an unjust advantage. I think of that, and it's just, if you're wronged, just leave it at that. You don't have to wrong them back. You can't control if you're wronged by somebody, but you can control if you don't retaliate. You don't fight fire with fire. And I just love how he says it's better to get a disadvantage, or it's better to be regarded being worse as better than getting an advantage. So, like, you don't want to get an advantage over someone, an unfair advantage. It would be better to have a disadvantage over somebody. So, you just really enjoyed that point right there. He says, think of death not as an evil, and life not as a good, and likewise not to shun hardship, and never for a moment seek ease and indulgence. I think it's a big part of the Stoics to talk about death as not an evil, and he is no exception. He talks about it a lot in this book, and I think it's very powerful just to look at death as a natural thing, and it not being evil, and not being something you should be afraid of or should shun. It's just part of life. Even the good man dies. Musonius Rufus says, it's a debt we all have, we all owe, and we all have to pay one day. And it's good to just not look at it something natural as an evil, you know. Um, then he has one on training, chapter 6. So a man who wishes to become good not only must be thoroughly familiar with the precepts which are conducive to virtue, but must also be earnest and zealous in applying these principles. There's two type of people. There's the people who talk about it, and there's the people who are about it. And you want to be the second. You want to be the latter. You don't want to just have all the knowledge and wisdom to do these good things but not actually implement them and put them into action. You need to train yourself in the real world with action and practice and reps. And that's kind of what I get out of that message there. If you want to be virtuous, it's more than just knowing the definition of say like justice. You need to, or self-control, discipline. You might know it's not giving into these pleasures and urges, but if you haven't been practicing regret or rejecting pleasures and urges, you're not going to be able to do it. So I really like that one. Then in this chapter also, he said not to place receiving over giving. You should give more than you get. There's a lot of people in this world who need help, and I say it's unjust to not help those who need help when you're flourishing, you know. He says the philosopher's body should be well prepared for physical activity because often the virtues make use of this as a necessary instrument for the affairs of life. I think just goes back to just body and soul. It's your body's a temple from God. You need to treat your body well, just as your soul. And if you want to implement some virtue in some of these actions you need to do, you need to be physically fit. You can't be a 300-pound couch potato if you need to go run to save somebody or whatever it may be. Your body needs to be just as in shape as your mind. And then chapter 7 is that one should disdain hardships, and that is the title of this book. And it kind of threw me off at first as I looked up disdain, and it was saying something that doesn't deserve respect, it's unworthy. And I kind of interpreted that at first as him saying that hardships are unworthy. And how I kind of took that was that they're not good, you know? And then I was kind of interested about that because just what he talks about is the opposite of that. But then I realized I think he actually means that hardships shouldn't deserve your respect because they're really not hardships. It's natural. It's just part of the human experience. So as a little more diving in, that's kind of how I interpreted this chapter and this title of this book. I would like to hear if any of you watching this video interpret it a different way. I love seeing different perspectives. So yeah, let me know if you think I'm wrong. Look upon hardship with disdain. One of the lines I really liked from the new interpretation I got. We gain every good by toil, and toil is hard work, which is profound. I really like that one. Shall we not be ready to endure hardship for the sake of complete happiness? For surely there is no other end in becoming good than to become happy and to live happily for the remainder of our lives. You're not going to be happy just giving in the pleasures all day. And easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. Kind of what I got out of that one. Chapter 8 is that kings should also study philosophy. And I think this is really cool because Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic, was like the philosopher king. And in some people's eyes, one of the best kings ever. And he was a Stoic. He studied philosophy. He lived by philosophy. It was his North Star. So I think it just shows how powerful philosophy can be in a role like that. It says, do not imagine that it is more appropriate for anyone to study philosophy than for you. He's talking to a king when he says this, but I believe you should accept that upon yourself. Because a man who studies philosophy will always rule over at least one, which is himself. And that's all you need to be a kingly person. Number 9, that exile is not an evil. It's not, wherever you go, there you are, they say. Wherever you go on earth, it's God's land. You can be yourself there. You have the sun, you have the plants, you have the animals, you have life, you have nature around you. You shouldn't look at exile as an evil. I mean, and people don't really get exiled nowadays, but like moving, you move across the country or anything for work, or maybe you have to for whatever reason. You shouldn't look at this as a bad thing. You might move away from your friends, your family, but they're always in your heart. And especially nowadays, you can just call them, you can text them, you can be in touch with these people. but don't look upon it as an evil. It's natural. You're still on this earth. That's what you should look at. One earth, not one place. That's where we live. Exile does not change the truths of life. When he stopped living a life of luxury, he ceased to be ill. Talking about a man who stopped living a life of luxury. And I think exile back in the day would cause you to stop living so luxuriously. And luxury is not always good, as you probably know, and as the Stoics talk about a lot. For to scheme how to bite back the biter and to return evil for evil is the act not of a human being, but of a wild beast, which is incapable of reasoning, that the majority of wrongs are done to man through ignorance and misunderstanding. You shouldn't fight fire with fire. You don't bite back the biter. Understand that people aren't trying to be wrong. In their eyes, they believe they're right. For whatever reason, you may feel wrong, but they feel like they're being right. So just try to put yourself in their shoes, see things from their perspectives, and forgive people. There's no reason to hold grudges in this life. On sexual indulgence, unjust and unlawful, when it is mere pleasure seeking, even in marriage. Don't seek pleasure for pleasure's sake. Lust is one of the sins, obviously, and it's just pleasure. It's just seeking pleasure for pleasure's sake. You gain nothing out of it. The act of having children is what it was made for, not pleasure and indulgence. And he has chapter 18. It's called and talks about on food. He believed that the beginning and he believed that the beginning of temperance lay in self-control and in eating and drinking. He would also say that it's one of the things you deal with twice a day, almost, or at least twice a day, every day. Eating and trying not to overindulge in eating. So you got to be very careful on eating, because it's a really good way to build self-discipline and self-control, but it's also a way into gluttony and to have poor discipline and poor self-control. So be careful when eating to not overindulge. Talks about on furnishing. He just talks about basically not buying expensive things because they're expensive. Then you hold more value to them than they should have. There's a story of Epictetus who has a lamp. It gets stolen from him, and then he says that is his fault, because he had something which, if it was stolen, he would feel some type of way about it. So he went out and bought a cheaper lamp, because inexpensive things are less likely to be stolen, easier to replace, and not that big of a deal. Then we have chapter 21, and it's on cutting the hair. And I've been thinking about cutting my hair for a while, just because I feel like it's just, it's not good for performance. Honestly, it's on my eyes all the time. So I wear a hat in most of these videos because it's always in my eyes. I don't like wearing hats that much, but it gets to get into the length where it just in my eyes all the time, and it's kind of annoying. So this one hit a little bit because I like my hair, but I only like it for aesthetics, which obviously a Stoic would say is futile. It doesn't matter. Who cares my appearance? The body and the inside, the soul is what matter. Hair is only for aesthetics. But it is not possible to live well today unless one thinks of it as his last. Beautifully said, written. What is not in our control we ought to entrust to the universe and gladly yield to it, whether it asks for our children, our country, our body, or anything whatsoever. I just think this goes back to trusting God and things that are outside of your control. Just entrust the universe with. There's nothing you can do about it, so might as well not waste your time dwelling on it. And he says to relax the mind is to lose it. I've really been trying lately to not do so many mindless things, like just watch or listen to music on every car ride. Sometimes just sit there and think. Think about life, think about the beauty around me. I also try not to, every time I'm have a spare second, put on a podcast. I'm trying to seek knowledge and wisdom, but just pounding yourself with information isn't always the answer. Sometimes you just got to take it easy and just understand life around you and think about the lessons you've already learned and cement those, instead of being half cemented this lesson and gain a new one and then losing that lesson and getting 50% on the next lesson and then losing that because you're learning another one. You want to stick with things. Don't just get the gist of them. Just fully understand them, fully dive into them, and then move on to the next thing. So just give yourself in your mind more time to just think. Silence isn't bad. Solitude is great for thinking and understanding some points that you're having trouble with understanding. But yeah, that's the book. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you will pick up this book. It's a very good book. Very short too. It's like 110 pages. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. Peace.